Hello, I'm Dr. Charles David Tauber, CEO of the Coalition for Work with Psychotrauma and Peace, the Cwwpp. In this video, I want to tell you a little of what the Cwwpp is, what we do, and the standpoints that we take. First, I'm a physician. I got my medical qualification from the University of Groningen in the Netherlands in the late 1980s. After that, I did a number of graduate courses in psychological trauma, general practice, forensic medicine, and other medical areas. I'm one of the founders of the Cwwpp. I grew up in a refugee family in a refugee neighborhood in New York. Thus, I learned a good deal about refugees and traumatization at home, as well as professionally. By the way, one of my grandmothers was an illegal immigrant to the USA. I've been working in movements for social change since 1966, first in the environmental and peace movements, and later in work with refugees and asylum seekers. I've also had training and experience in nonviolent conflict transformation. When I finished my medical qualification in 1988, I became a member of the Amnesty International International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War Medical Examination Group, and other Dutch local and national groups giving assistance to asylum seekers in their requests for asylum. We were also treating asylum seekers where other doctors weren't. As we'll see later in this series, working with asylum seekers is not easy, and it takes special skills and a large amount of time and energy. At the time we were working, there were a lot of very good people volunteering their time and effort with asylum seekers. There were also staff members of the asylum seeker centers. Most of both groups of people had little or no education with asylum seekers and refugees. That is, with the cultural differences and the high levels of traumatization. And they were not getting assistance with the traumas that they themselves were getting by hearing the stories of the traumas. Out of that, the education and supervision method known as pragmatic empowerment training, otherwise known as PET, was born. I'll talk about PET in detail in the next video. In the early 1990s, the wars in the former Federal Socialist Republic of Yugoslavia broke out. Some of us from various groups formed a working group on the region. The Cwwpp was formed out of that working group. I came to Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Serbia in June 1995, and we've been here ever since. Our main field office is in Vukovar in eastern Croatia, which suffered heavily in 1991. The region in which we live is on the Danube River. The cultures here are 8,000 years old, and one of the first calendars in Europe was found close by. It's a beautiful and fascinating place, but also a sad one in many respects. I should mention that, formally, we're a non-profit organization registered in the Netherlands. We've also got a local organization registered in Croatia and are registered as a foreign organization in Bosnia-Herzegovina. In the USA, we have a fiscal agent. So, enough history. What do we do? Our main aim is to increase capacity in working with psychological trauma and the physical consequences of it. We know that there are not enough psychologists and psychiatrists and social workers and others around to deal with all the people who have reactions to severe traumatic events such as wars, natural disasters, discrimination, migration, and other man-made and natural disasters. We also know that, very frequently, experts don't reach the people on the ground as well as their friends and neighbors can. It's not that the experts don't have the knowledge, but they're just at a higher level than most of the people. Thus, what we do is train people on the ground, in villages and communities, to assist one another. They become barefoot therapists, who otherwise are called peer supporters. We use the method known as pragmatic empowerment training, or PET, to do that. I'll explain PET in detail in the next video. We also do a very limited amount of direct counseling with anybody who comes to our door. Another important part of our work is giving psychological supervision to people who are assisting other people. When we work with people, unconsciously, we absorb some of their traumas. We also tend to work too hard when we care about something. This leads to reactions called burnout, which I'll explain a little later in this first course. Psychological supervision means that anyone who is working with other people talks to someone else and gets out the absorbed traumas and tries to get balance in his or her life. Every person working with traumatized people needs supervision, be they psychologists or doctors or teachers or volunteers. We'll come back to this supervision frequently in this series. Before going further, I want to discuss our biases and prejudices and our standpoints. We all have them, whether or not we're aware of them or not. I want to tell you about ours. I would ask you to become aware of yours, whether or not you tell us about them. First, we believe that all people should have control of their own lives and should take that control very seriously. Our mission is to give people the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to do so. That's called empowerment. Next, we don't believe that we have all the answers. Thus, we believe that any process and any process of interaction between people is a two-way street. Thus, we never stop learning. Certainly, we don't have all the answers. In a similar way, we believe in working from the bottom up rather than from the top down. Like the psychologist Carl Rogers, we believe that people have the answers to their own issues, rather than having those answers dictated from above. With regard to psychological trauma, we believe that people have normal reactions to traumatic events and that those reactions are not pathological. The reactions can be psychological and physical and are usually a combination of both. Although there are some common combinations of reactions, the specific combination is individual to the person. We'll talk about those common reactions later in the series. The important thing here, which we will come back to many times, is that if you have a reaction to traumatic events, you're not sick. Another point here in dealing with traumatic reactions is that work is long-term. It is very rare that things happen overnight, as much as we would like them to. It takes patience to deal with them, and that's difficult. In a similar way, we don't believe in drug therapy. We know that drugs can assist in relieving symptoms sometimes, but they don't get to the heart of the problem. That takes a variety of types of work, which we'll discuss later. Again, the type of work that is effective is different for each person and can change in the course of time. Finally, we believe in self-help groups, also known as mutual interest groups. These are groups of people with similar interests who get together to discuss the issues affecting them. These can be people with specific experiences, people living in a village or town, people with a specific disease, former soldiers, teenagers, and a very wide variety of people in other circumstances. Frequently, people in such groups know more than the experts. Also, knowing that you're not alone and that you can share with someone else helps a great deal. Okay, I've talked for a while now. It would be good, I think, if you think about the points I've made. If you want to tell us about what you're thinking, there are two ways to do so. One is to post to the place below, and the other is to write us individually. Remember, please, that when you post in this course, that everybody and anybody can see it. I'll see you in the next video.